Taylor McHargue had joined us throughout the college football season, analyst for ESPN, color analyst for ESPN, and tonight's the national championship game. Nice enough to join us today on this day of the national title. Taylor, you want to give us kind of your the keys to, besides the things of turnovers, et cetera, but anything in particular with Georgia TCU?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing, just as a fan of the sport, I can't remember being this excited for a national championship, because I think it's refreshing just to have some different faces in there. I mean, I get on the other side, you've got Georgia, but what a story it's been for TCU. And truly, like in the modern college football, I feel like this really is modern day David and Goliath. You said it. I mean, I could give you the cliches on, ball control and turnovers and stuff like that. I think for TCU, it's real simple to have a chance in this game. They've got to figure out a way to steal a possession or two in both halves of this game, because if they line up and play their 1v1 and both teams don't turn the ball over, Georgia's going to win this game. So expect to see something from TCU where they'll know that. And I don't know if that's in the special teams game or extending drives going forward on fourth down when they might. Usually they wouldn't in certain situations, but TCU has to keep their offense on the field, limit possessions on the other side for Stetson Bennett. And the other piece that I would pay attention to, Stetson Bennett went crazy in the second half, specifically the fourth quarter against Ohio State, but he really didn't play that well in the first half. And you heard it in Kirby Smart's comments after the game. I mean, he really charged up his quarterback, saying he's got to play better. So I'm interested to see, how does Stetson Bennett look right out of the gate? Does he have a better first half?
Taylor, for TCU, I mean, it's kind of weird, but even I think in the Big 12, everybody was kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop with them all year long, until the very bitter end of overtime for Kansas State to hand them their first and only loss of the year. But is this maybe the first time this year that they won't sneak up on somebody, at least in some regard, because of what happened with Michigan last week?
Maybe, but I still think they are still looked at as kind of how I described them, honestly, still looked at as the Cinderella story. And at some point they turn back into a pumpkin, and you're just sort of waiting around for that. And there's a chance that you see them come out and really be the more physical side tonight, because they have nothing to lose. You'll know almost immediately against Georgia if they come out, which is what they did against Michigan, where they bowed up in the red zone so many times, especially in that first half. But we'll know immediately if there's anything that I took from, I talked about Kirby Smart's post-game comments. He was up there on that podium after they beat Ohio State, and frankly, he looked pissed. He didn't look like a coach that had just won a semifinal game. I would imagine he got in his kids' crawl immediately after that game and said, you guys need to figure it out, because if you spot this team in TCU a first half like you just did against Ohio State, they'll beat you. And the talent disparity, it's real there. I mean, there's some NFL guys on this side for TCU, but top down, once you get into the twos and some of the backups and the line rotations, Georgia is a much better football team in terms of talent, but TCU is going to be playing with nothing to lose. So maybe they're overlooked, but if there's a coach that I could see really getting his guys ready to go, it's Kirby Smart on the other side.
Taylor, how much of a loss would Kendre Miller be if he's not able to go tonight? Obviously, the reports don't seem all that positive. We're not going to see him full force, obviously. There could be some mind games going on, but we could very well not see him at all. If he can't go, or he's not even close to 100%, how do you like DeMarcado in that spot? Yeah,
it's huge. I thought DeMarcado played well in the semifinal game, but it's obviously huge if Kendre Miller can't go. The other piece, Max Duggan is going to have to continue to be Superman for this team, and some of that is in the run game, which is what we've seen. They've supplemented the quarterback run game if and when Kendre Miller can't go. That's the other piece to this game. I talked about stealing possessions for TCU on that side of the ball. Max Duggan is going to have to go above and beyond, really outside the shell and the framework of their offense. There's going to have to be some things that he does that, frankly, are a little bit like Superman. Some of what we saw late in the game against Kansas State, the Big 12 championship, even though they lost that game, they're going to have that type of effort out of him if they have a chance in this game.
I when watching Ohio State kind of control the tempo for a lot of the game with Georgia, C.J. Stroud, Taylor, looked very comfortable in the pocket, and when he did get pressure, he's not known for being a guy that runs as much, but he did. And if that's the case, can that also then be beneficial with Max Duggan at TCU, because he does like to run?
There's no doubt, and I think we will know immediately, but I'm interested to see if it's actually a little different style than how Georgia treated C.J. Stroud, where do they back off a little bit and do they not come after Max Duggan and make him beat them throwing the ball down the field, maybe spy him, instead of if they try to heat him up. He's a veteran quarterback. He's played football forever for TCU. If they try to heat him up, he's going to know where he's hot. He's going to get rid of the ball, and you may get after him and you may sack him here and there, but he's also going to get his shots as well. So we'll know on that first drive how Georgia's going to try and treat him. But sometimes you'll see with a veteran quarterback like that, a defense just say, you know what, we're just going to rush three. We may try and bring a fourth here and there, but we're going to play a shell defense. We'll keep everything in front. We're going to make you grind out drives on us and then not let them scramble.
If TCU wins tonight, do you see that as the first domino to fall in a sea change in college football, or am I making too much of it? It might be just kind of a one-off.
I think it's probably just a one-off. I think it'll go down, if they were to win this, I think it'll go down as number one of the most improbable stories ever in college football. But the story of the season, first-year head coach, picked to be seventh in the Big 12. Chandler Morris was the starting quarterback for this team. I remember watching, they played a Friday night game against Colorado. In the first half of that game, I believe it was like 6-0 at halftime against Colorado, who ended up being one of the worst Power 5 teams in the country. And I remember texting some buddies as I'm watching that game thinking, okay, this isn't even going to be a bowl team. This is a bad football team. And then you fast forward, and I love some of the comments that we've heard from Sonny Dykes as the season's gone along, and especially the last couple of weeks, where he's just talked about what an incredible team he inherited, and a true team where they're self-policed. He doesn't really ever worry about them getting too high with the highs or too low with the lows. And a lot of that is still the culture that Gary Patterson had instilled in the players that he had obviously recruited. But a ton of credit obviously goes to Sonny Dykes for taking over in year one and recognizing what they had in Max Duggan, even though he didn't win the job in camp.
What do you think of the story of Stetson Bennett up to this point, Taylor?
I think it's another story of, for college football, as much as we make of the 5 stars and the guys that grab all the headlines that ultimately become first-round picks, I think there still is a path, especially in this transfer portal era, there is a path for kids, and I'm going to draw a blank on his name, but the Pittsburgh quarterback that had never really played, he was a 5th-year senior, steps up and wins a bowl game for them. That's obviously lesser to Stetson Bennett's story, but they're out there. Those opportunities are there when, whether it's a situation maybe better somewhere else, or some of it, I think, is you've got 18 and 19-year-olds that it's the first time they've really faced a ton of adversity, and they leave. And I think there's opportunities for kids that stick around and, in Stetson's case, went away, got some experience, came back and decided, I'll fight here. I'll fight for the job. If it means I'm going to be the second or third team guy for a while, that's okay. But at some point I'll get my shot and I'll take advantage of it. And he did. And no matter how many times it felt like they tried to replace him, I saw him at the Manning camp. If you ran into him and you didn't know what he looked like, he looks like he's in a fraternity at Georgia. You would have no idea that he is the starting quarterback of the best team in the country. And if they win tonight, you could argue it's a dynasty that they're creating at Georgia. And I think that's still part of what makes college football so special is, like I said, those opportunities are still out there, not just for quarterbacks, but for anybody that sticks around and has loyalty to a program. Eventually they get their shot.
Taylor, great stuff. Thank you for being a part of it on the day of the national championship game and all throughout the college season. Hope to be a staple of what we do in 2023. ESPN analyst Taylor McHargue, former Rice quarterback, with us on Georgia and also TCU.